Bursitis can be really uncomfortable, especially when it's accompanied by pain and discomfort. Whether it's in the shoulder, hip, elbow, or knee, we're sharing 3 easy tips that can effectively reduce or even completely get rid of your pain and discomfort.
So definitely stick with it, because often what helps the most is precisely what many people tend to avoid when dealing with bursitis.
Why does bursitis even occur? There are many theories about that. Our understanding is that the muscles and fascia are under excessive tension. And because of that, the tendon's positioned over the bursa, where the bursa is designed to cushion everything, pressed too intensely, leading them to produce an increasing amount of fluid. And then you might know knees that become incredibly swollen, elbows that become incredibly swollen, because the bursa, out of sheer desperation from being so compressed, keeps pumping more fluid in to protect itself.
For me, a bursitis is essentially like having an internal bandage wrapped around inside, you know? Yeah.
That's a good image, it fits. And it directly leads to tip number 1, because tip number 1 is don't completely immobilize it. While this inner bandage that Petra is talking about still allows certain movements because the body knows exactly what it wants and what it doesn't, completely immobilizing it is pretty much wrong in our opinion. Because then the tensions, the shortening, which already occurred due to insufficient movement, tend to increase even further over time. So it's about staying active and moving, not like before because that led to the bursa issue, but in a different way. And we'll get to that in the last tip later on.
Of course, bursitis, commonly referred to as inflammation of the bursa, is also closely connected to nutrition as well. Bursitis. So that means an inflammatory reaction is actively developing in that specific area, causing noticeable discomfort. And an inflammatory reaction is, of course, always a healing response. So what specific steps do we need to take next to address this issue effectively? We need to give the body exactly the nutrition that has an anti-inflammatory effect, or rather allows the inflammation to run its course until the very end, until everything is healed again. And here it's as simple as always. Plant-based food comes first and foremost. Second, drink plenty of water, and the plant-based diet should also be colorful. That would also be nice. That means lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, lots of salads. Lots of nuts, lots of seeds, lots of herbs and spices. Now you're actively tackling inflammation directly, plus there's even more to consider. It's deeply connected to nutrition, but it's a completely different approach. I'm talking about the quark compress or the cabbage compress, for example. It effectively helps to reduce the inflammation precisely in the area where the bursa is inflamed and causing discomfort. That's why it's good to apply a quark compress or a nice cabbage wrap once a day.
Cauliflower or red cabbage?
White cabbage, okay.
Cooked or raw?
Raw, of course. And you also take these leaves and flatten them out using a cake roller, which is quite similar to a dough roller typically used for pastry. This way, it releases the active ingredients from the cabbage leaves, and that's exactly what brings about the desired healing effect. All right, now we'll go ahead and move on to number 3.
Yes, number 3, you've probably guessed it again. Of course, with the appropriate exercises, we'll normalize and relieve the tension in the muscles and fascia. Bring it down far enough so that the stone pouch is no longer so overstimulated. And now it of course depends, are we talking about the shoulder? There are opening movements in this angle towards the back, which often turn out to be immediately effective. For the hip, it's often the hip flexor, so overextension is a good option. For the elbow, the main focus is on bending and extending, with particular attention to the bending movement in this position. For the tricep, to stretch it out completely. And what else did we have? And we also have the knee. And with the knee, it's really important to release the tension from the calf and to release the tension from the thigh. And usually everything is fine there. But the specific exercises, you can find them on the YouTube channel in one of our playlists, so go ahead. And then you just do them and give them a try.
You know, what does this topic remind me of? Actually, it reminds me of that relative by marriage of ours.
I know, yeah, he had a really swollen knee. It was noticeably thick and quite striking.
And he was also in treatment for a really long time.
And he was supposed to have a radioactive fluid injected directly into his body to prevent the production of mucus. And he didn't go ahead with it because he got scared after hearing that. And then I just showed him the stretching, and it took a few days, but it got much better pretty quickly, and then it was gone and everything was fine again.
Yes, that's it for the exercises. If you happen to know someone dealing with bursitis, no matter where it is, make sure to pass these helpful tips along to them. It could really make a difference. I'm sure he'll be really grateful to you for it.